我们接下来回来继续跟孟迪斯教授来谈他对于中国的观察。Professor Mendes, you were in China just before there's a trade war starting to begin, and you have also have your book regarding the American-China relations being translated into Chinese. The English title is called Peaceful War, how the Chinese dream and American destiny create a Pacific new world order. The Chinese translation title is called 和平的战争. You seem to suggest that American dream, which is more about equality, freedom, and the growing prosperity for all, just like you said, is a continual process. And somehow, what's its relations with the Chinese dream that President Xi had been saying, the rejuvenation of the nation? And is it going to be somehow coincide with each other, or is it going to be in conflict that a lot of people have predicted? What's your thinking on this?
Well, let me talk about the American dream.
Okay.
American dream, which pretty much come from the Thomas Jefferson when he wrote that brilliant phrase, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness in the Declaration of Independence. And that was the America's idealism, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Life is an economic concept. You need to have a livelihood to live on the life. Liberty is the political concept, is the freedom. And the pursuit of happiness, I describe as a pursuit of happiness for the spiritual happiness. That also coming into the notion of the freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and so forth, the Bill of Rights. So you have a life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We have an economic concept, political concept, and then there are a religious or spiritual concept. That is the American dream. But this foundation for this tripod of America, what we call the United States of America, stay on this tripod as an individual. You are a person. You have the life, your choice, your liberty. I cannot hit you. My freedom is stop under my arm length. That's the liberty. Okay. And then the pursuit of happiness. You can pursue your religious belief to be happy for this life to the next life and so forth. And it is an individual dream. So that is the American dream. The freedom to be whoever, whatever wanted to be. That also extended to all the humanity, because America was the promised land. The safety for everybody, the rich and the poor, sick and the healthy, all came to America as the promised land from the religious persecution and also the potato famine in Ireland and the economic hardship in the elsewhere in the world. America is the promised land for everybody. So that is the individual dream. They can, if you have a determination to be successful, you have the place. Nobody can take it away from that one. That's America. So now China is very brilliant in their semantic. They know about the 100 years of the century of humiliation, and they are very, very soaked in the history. So they know their history, and they want to not to have another humiliation when the China become more stronger. So that's what happened when the Deng Xiaoping opened up the economy, and the China is starting from the Shenzhen to Xiamen to Shanghai to Qingdao, any other places in the coastal region, and they are developed. If you look at it now, the China has the middle income people more than the United States. And pretty much China per capita income basis, the purchasing power parity, PPP, China is much more advanced than the US. So China has this economic strength, and now then after President Deng Xiaoping's, President Xi Jinping came in, is pretty much took the U-turn. And I thought this is openness in the economic and go into the political realm. But when President Xi Jinping came and he introduced the concept called the One Belt, One Road Initiative, OBER. Now it's changed into the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, which is couched in a larger framework of policy framework of what it called the China Dream. It is not the Chinese dream. It is the China dream. Chinese dream is an individual dream for you. China doesn't have that one. They have a China dream as a collective, as a national. It's the nation dream. It's a national rejuvenation, as you said. So national rejuvenation come in a two component to the Chinese dream. It is a collective dream for the as a nation. It is also coming in the notion of the Taoist and Confucian thinking. The Taoist and Confucian thinking is that collectively we are much better than individual. So if you have, it's just like it takes a village to raise a child. So this is the concept of a different way of looking at the world, collective dream. You need to create a village to raise the child. So then we have a good community. So this is the Chinese mindset of the collectivism. It's coming from the Confucian and Taoist tradition. So now Chinese rejuvenation, they're bringing back the culture. What does that mean in the BRI? It has a BRI have two components. One is a belt and the road. One is, even though called the belt, it is going through the westward from the ancient capital of China, Xi'an. Okay, and at that time they are reflecting the cosmopolitan China during the Tang Dynasty. That is the China's one of the most prosperous, most cosmopolitan, and most peaceful time period in the Chinese history. It is essentially Chinese, as opposed to, for example, Yuan Dynasty or the Qing Dynasty, much came later. So Tang Dynasty, the cosmopolitan China, they wanted to bring back that Tang Dynasty to the forefront. That's called the belt. It goes from western China, Xi'an, all the way to the westward to the Europe and so forth. So that was the Tang Dynasty. Now they wanted to connect the road. Road comes from the Ming Dynasty. Ming Dynasty is also known for their naval supremacy, the maritime supremacy, where Admiral Cheng He during the Ming Dynasty went 7 times on their westward journey to from Qingdao or the eastern part toward the South China Sea, and then crossed the Malacca Strait and went to Sri Lanka and also went to Mecca, because the Admiral Cheng He was from Yunnan province, and he was a Muslim, so he has a national tradition. So you can see this is the Ming Emperor who is hung, and used the admiral, the Muslim admiral. Actually, he is one of the favorite eunuchs in the Ming imperial court, and he went to Sri Lanka and to Africa, and also went to Mecca, to the birthplace of the Allah, Muhammad. So he essentially reflects the maritime supremacy, that when he went to Sri Lanka, he went with the huge flotilla of ships. You can imagine, this was pretty much almost 100 years prior to Christopher Columbus sent 3 ships to the Americas to discover America. These are very small ships. Actually, they are very, if you say this is Columbus 3 ships, came to discover America. And compared to the almost 100 years prior to that one, Christopher Columbus came, huge ships. It is the size of the American football field. Okay, and they are not only these ships has the map makers, who knows about astronomy and astrology and diplomatic relation, and there are anthropologists and the sociologists, and there are many others went into this ship. And then they also, of course, they have a military to defense. In there is a case of fight or the piracy on the high seas. So now President Xi and the Chinese leadership recognizes this Tang Dynasty, one belt over there, and then the road went on the Ming Dynasty. So they combine. This is what is called their Chinese culture, bringing back the Chinese culture, the confidence about the culture, cultural confidence, what the China is speaking about. And also the China bringing in this rejuvenation of these two dynasties. You can see the distinction. This is the Han dynasties. They are not really proudly talking about two other dynasties, which is the Yuan Dynasty up under Kublai Khan, which is pretty much a Mongolian, and then you have the Qing Dynasty, which is essentially these two dynasties are very successful, very kind and nice to the Chinese people, but they are not essentially Han Chinese, so-called Chinese, but they are the Mongolian, they call the Yuan Dynasty, and then you have a Qing Dynasty, which is the Manchurian. So they are not talking about that part, but even though these two dynasties are, relatively speaking, is also very kind and nice to bring the prosperity and peace to the Chinese people. So, but in the BRI, now they are bringing in these two dynasties, I think, is a rejuvenation of the Chinese culture. And essentially what is important is the belt that going the westward, even though it's a Tang Dynasty, is the most prosperous, the height of that Chinese civilization. But it started with the Han, the Silk Road. It started with when the first admiral, the first diplomat went westward. And then Tang Dynasty, Xuanzang, the Buddhist monk, went to India, and prior to then Park Xian went to Sri Lanka, for example. He spent 2 years. So they have, this is connections on the Silk Road to Sri Lanka. And then this side you have a maritime Silk Road. So Sri Lanka is becoming a hub.
I hate to interrupt. It's very fascinating when you talk about historical and philosophical analysis. But I want to ask you, the BRI, now China is starting to sponsor. Can it be sustainable? What I mean is now with the economic slowdown that happened all around the world, especially in China, that the bottom line is still the economic link that is going through. Can China make the BRI successful under the current situation?
The short answer is, I think, yes. American analyst, mostly armchair pundit, who mostly never went to China. I had the privilege to visit all the 34 provinces of China, visited all the provincial museums, and taught, give lectures in 27 Chinese universities, including Renmin, Tsinghua, and Peking, and Fudan, and Nanjing, Wuhan even. So I have a kind of different kind of analysis of China than the most of the analysts in the West, because of my upbringing in Sri Lanka, give you the kind of bird view of America and China. When you are in a tree, you cannot see the tree looks like. But if you go distance, you can see what the tree looks like and so forth. So my analysis is a little bit different. I think to set the preface to this analysis is if you look at it when China went through, became a member of the World Trade Organization, and 2008 the housing collapse in the US and even in Asia, everybody was talking about collapse theory. China collapse and China collapse and China collapse. It still is going very well. Only thing they collapse was the theory itself. So what is interesting is China has a very deliberate focus on the rejuvenation. They are very, in a way, they are very nationalistic, and then they can focus on, very laser focus on one thing because of the Communist Party, CPC. They have, their governance system is pretty much controlled by the system itself, and now technology is also enabling them to be more aggressive on this one through the social credit system and the surveillance system enforced in everywhere, and now they are moving forward to 5G technology, which is also enabling the Communist Party of China to guide the population to the very focus, and this is what China wants to be, to rejuvenation of bring forward the fruitful result found in the BRI, or bring in the China dream. So I think because this is a strategy, is also the using the Chinese reserve, they can have the finance through the state-owned enterprises, and also through the companies, private companies, they are kind of championing for certain companies in the certain industries. So they have a very deliberate plan for this one. Unlike the US wanted to go from crossing the river. They go by one stock over there, then look, they put the another step there, going to the other side of the road. China has not doing that one. China has a boat to go across the river. So the US, because of the financial issues, I do not see foreseeable future unless the policy changes in the US and they have a more different kind of relationship with China. America cannot continue to be the global leader in economic side. It is unlikely, I think. But China has this is the built-on system, and they are continuously working on this one. They are not changing every 4 years. America change every time. Then the focus change. You are zigzagging from the Republican Democratic administration and so forth. They don't have a coherent long-term policy, even though now everybody is anti-China, even in the US Congress, both Democrat and Republican. That's not a strategy. This is the problem. Becoming anti-China is not a strategy. They were talking about blaming China is not a strategy. Okay, but China is, as I said, meaningfully silent. America is meaningless noise. Where is the strategy? Where is the beef? That's the question one need to ask. China has the beef. And China is already extending its footprint in more than 100 countries. From the BRI, now they have AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and they then have then the BRIC Bank with the 4 countries, with India, Russia, South Africa, and China. So there are some of these countries like South Africa and India, they say American friends. So China has the imprint over there. And in terms of the China's allies are part of now China. For example, look at the Europe. When you come to the 5G, England is still in the fence line. The German and the French pretty much, and Italy and other countries going with the 5G, the Huawei and ZTE, and so I mean other telephone companies with because they have the cost effectiveness, because they can do it because of government subsidies and so forth. They have the money to do it, and there is no way, there is no any other company in the world compete in it. US doesn't have companies to produce this kind of equipment, and Nokia and Samsung and Ericsson. They might be, but in a slow motion. Okay, so the China is one step or two step ahead of that one. So I think now they are after the coronavirus. Now they are taking this BRI. They move into the digital Silk Road through the 5G. Now they are adapting very nicely. This is the wonderful thing about China. They are adapting, changing according to, that's the strategy. US is not adapting; they are reacting, reacting to China and blaming China. That's not again a strategy. It's a reaction, not a strategy. So I think now after coronavirus, the BRI become a digital Silk Road. Now it's the health Silk Road. Health Silk Road essentially they find a strategy. They find the advantage to provide this technology, Chinese technology, and the protective equipment to PPE to these countries, then is naturally linked to the Beijing.
One more question before we go is that only a week ago we hear Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is saying that China is being pushed into a new Cold War. You just said that there's a lot of anti-China feeling going on. Would China react to this new Cold War by starting the Cold War itself? Who is the one that should be blamed for this new Cold War? Is it China or is it the United States?
You know, there are few forces are at work. One is the Trump administration wants to decouple China from technology. So you're probably fully aware of this one, TSMC here, the technology semiconductor is a leading in the world. So they want to decouple, moving that one from China to Arizona, for example. And there's a Foxconn to Wisconsin. I don't know, these are political decisions translate into the economic decision for this corporate entity. They are not driven by the politics. They are always driven by the economics. That is the nature of the multinational corporations as opposed to the government sentiment or the motivation to go into other countries. So having said that one, decoupling is going on and China is responding. So when you decoupled, are we going to not to send the Midwestern crops, soybean, the corn, and chicken, pork, and beef to China? Are you going to decouple that one? Where are you going to find the marketplace for that one? Coming back to the China, China see this is an opportunity. Every crisis for China is an opportunity. This is what Foreign Minister Wang Yi was talking about, the new Cold War. But I have a different perspective. I think China is not really ready for this one. You are making angry everywhere because America is trying to take that opportunity to take advantage of the anger against the Chinese action around the world because of the coronavirus, because this came from Wuhan. But you cannot blame China because SARS came from other countries, and also the Ebola virus came from another place, and the flu, in the Spanish flu, whatever you can call it, they are coming from, these are global. Next one, we don't know where it is coming from, another American state. Who knows that one? So you are going to blame for this one, ask for the compensation for this one. This is the reactionary way of the Congress doing to make them feel better themselves for their constituency, because they can feel they did something. And this is not going to be a strategy. For coming back to the one is comment about the new Cold War, which is not the new Cold War in the sense that the Soviet Union and China, U.S. Cold War after the World War I until the early 1990s when Gorbachev dissolved the Soviet Union. The Cold War in this sense is a very different kind of Cold War, which I call it in my book is the peaceful war. It is a peaceful war taking place. They are not going to shoot each other, no nuclear exchange, but it is the economic. And it's also propaganda war, or maybe what you call the fake news world. This is very common at the very beginning of the American Republic. I think this Cold War, it is not the war with the material sense, the war. It is the war of the mind, war of the ideology. That's kind of what I think is the end game would be. End game would be the war of ideas. The question one need to ask is that whether you want to live with the American dream as a global citizen, where there is a freedom and your individual rights is more prominent than the government telling you what to do, or you want to live on a civilian society. Big Brother is watching over you. You cannot say what you believe in it. There is no innovation, no creativity. Your mouth is shut. So that is the kind of world you want to live on. So the war of ideas is kind of, I think, is the end game. So the new Cold War, I think if America gets its act together and return to the American vision that the founding fathers want to America to be a global nation, the promised land for everybody, whoever come from anywhere in the world, whether Sri Lankan or the Taiwanese or the German or the Irish, Italian, when they come to America, they become Americans. So this is the promised land. There is no any other country in the world. You can go over there, become that citizen of that country. I cannot come over here, ever be a Taiwanese. I never become a Chinese. I never become a German or the French or the British. Only in America is the unique country in the world. It is the created by this wisdom of these founding fathers. It's the global nation for everybody, anybody in the world come for America and make America great. This country is built by the foreigners. Whether you can for the Chinese laborers who built the continental railroads, African American build the nation's economic infrastructure. Okay, women built the world new world after when they went to the labor force after the World War II and won. So this is the kind of the new world. Everybody come from around the world, they become American. So that is the fear, I think, that causing this unrest in the boiling down in the white America as the fear of this democratic shift in America. You can see all the internet entrepreneurs and large corporations, CEOs, they are foreign born. If you look at Silicon Valley, they are Indians or the Chinese. So there is a natural fear. The brain trust of America is the foreigners who came to country. They believe in American ideals, American vision for the world. So they become American to make this great world better for the world. So that makes when the world become better, the America become greater, the world become greater as well. That is I think the founding vision. I think that will prevail no matter what China is trying to do in their own way of looking at the collective wisdom. It would not survive when the people wanted to have a freedom everywhere.
Thank you, Professor Mendes, for sharing your thoughts with us. 也谢谢各位观众收看，我们下次见。